Well, some stories get the whole country reacting. So let's share some Manitoba reaction to what has been developing in Ottawa. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and on This is Manitoba, we're going to be digging in to the aftermath of Chrystia Freeland, the Deputy Prime Minister's resignation, and her scathing resignation letter on the day where she was supposed to get up and deliver a fiscal update. So Canadians were waiting to hear on this day what was going to happen with the future of the Prime Minister. Would he step aside? He did not. And here's what some of you had to write from Manitoba perspective. Shola Agbula saying, time to call an election. The selfish interest of one leader should not hold the whole country hostage. Time for an election. Marianne Courchaine saying Freeland was his best man. She should run for PM. She was loyal to him. And to get a slap in the face by Trudeau, now we know he can spit anyone out of office. So what led up to this was 3 days before the fiscal update, Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, telling Freeland she would no longer be the Minister of Finance. Did you follow all of that? If not, don't worry. That's what This is Manitoba is all about. So we're going to go through this in some more detail. As mentioned, I'm Marcy Marcusa, and on the podcast, we always dig into the stories that you're talking about from a Manitoba perspective, always. We don't waste your time. So let's get right into this with a panel discussion. Winnipeg Liberal Hannah Mihychuk Marshall and Conservative Michael Pryzbyl are our guests. They have been following the news of Freeland's departure closely. We've got lots to talk about today. Hi.
Hi, Marcy. I'm glad to be here under the circumstances. You know, a lot's going on in these busy holiday season, and we're all focused on Ottawa.
Yeah, right, aren't we? Now, the Conservative Michael Pryzbyl is also here. He's been following the news of Freeland's departure closely. Hello there.
Good morning.
So each of you, what's one word to describe, from your Manitoba, your Canadian perspective here, what you watched unfold yesterday?
For me, it was quite shocking. It seemed like they were kind of leading about it with Steve or Mark Carney in the summer. So it seemed like it was a bit of a precursor. So I feel like it was coming. It was just surprising to actually see it unfold.
In that way. And how about for you, Hannah? What were you thinking? What was the word you would describe?
I think my word would be consequential. I think as much as happened yesterday, I think the most important things are still to come. And I can imagine that today and in the coming weeks and months, we are going to see the impacts of this and maybe a coming to head of the political climate of this country as it stands, as it has stood for about a year and a half. I think this is the point.
So we have yet to hear officially from the Prime Minister this morning. What are your thoughts and what are you waiting to hear from him, Michael?
In terms of him, I assume that he is going to be making the fall economic decision or the update. I think he's going to be the one that talks about it. There's nobody else qualified.
They put Dominic LeBlanc in there right now, but you're saying he's going to be the one that's going to have to wear whatever those decisions are that come out of the statement.
Correct.
Yeah.
An additional $20 billion spending. She set her own guardrail of $40 billion. And I think that the Prime Minister wanted to push her in order to get her to spend even more money. And I think that's where she threw her hat in and said, I'm done. My guardrail was $40 billion. I'm not willing to spend an additional $60 or $20 billion to make it $60 billion. So,
do you think the Libs are overspending and you think that that's on him?
I agree, yes.
Are you waiting? I'm wondering about his political future and what you just not even as an analyst, just like as a Manitoban. Does he go? Do you want him to go?
He should have been gone some time ago. I think with the NDP supporting him, I think that's when it should have been the nail in the coffin. I think relying on another party shows weakness, and I think Donald Trump even trolling Justin Trudeau himself, I think that shows that sign of weakness.
So you mean the comments that he's recently
Correct.
made, Donald Trump, about Canada, being a state, is calling him a governor now, quote
Correct.
unquote, right?
Correct.
What did the Liberals do right by you as a Manitoban? And where did they? And then I'll ask where they missed the mark. But I wonder where you think they did right by you to sort of tease this out.
I'm not quite sure what to say. What they did was correct or right. I think that they have the right mindset of. I'm a new father myself too, so I think the $10 childcare, I think, is a good idea. I think the execution of it, though, was poor. It's very difficult to find slots available. It's not many of them. It's very difficult to find availability. So I think the idea is good, but the execution was poor.
Got it. And where did they miss the mark for you? You said he should have been gone long ago, but
Yes.
in overall, in terms of obviously the Conservatives appeal to your life here more and work
Correct.
for you, but where have they missed it for you?
I think for myself personally, watching the House of Commons and seeing the scandal after scandal after scandal with Justin Trudeau, with the SNC Lavalin, We Charity scandal, even currently with Randy Boissonneau, and even the Green Slush Fund, everything, all the scandals that constantly come out with the Arrive Can app, everything that just hits him and hits him and hits him and hits him is just another misstep by him.
So, Hannah, what are your thoughts on where they go next in terms of leadership? First of all,
I understand where my co-guest comes from with a lot of what he's saying. It's something that we've been hearing from Canadians for quite a while now. I would have to disagree on the point about relying on another party shows weakness. I think it's one of the cornerstones of our democracy that we have that Team Canada front that has been kind of the term to use as the incoming president of the United States. The reality of that really sets in. I think that it's going to be hard for the Prime Minister to ignore this. I think we've gotten to the point where he can no longer. It was the letter previously. I think we were going down a path as a party, and there were roads to take to get off that path. But I think we didn't. We probably missed that mark.
What do you mean there were roads to get off that path? Is that a nice way of saying Trudeau could have stepped down earlier?
No, I mean, I think there were ways to address the concerns that Canadians had broadly in terms of cost of living, having a finger on the pulse a little bit more so.
So do you think they've missed that somewhere along the way? Then they became detached from what the everyday Canadian was concerned about.
I hate to say it, but I do believe there was an element of that. I think it happens. They were very focused on some incredible policy, but at one point, to avoid the political reckoning that is happening in Ottawa right now, I do believe a redirection was needed. And even Jagmeet Singh himself, well, he didn't really say that he would be pulling support if the Prime Minister were to stay on as Prime Minister and Liberal leader, but I believe it was his House leader.
Yeah, said there's no other way forward.
And so I just don't see any way around that. I imagine we'll be seeing other members of cabinet come forward. I'm surprised we didn't see more yesterday. I think losing Freeland is a pretty big hit considering the front that we do have to put on as a country to face Trump.
I wonder, Michael, it's interesting because both of you are saying that there's a disconnection between the Liberal Party. Hannah saying it happened along the way. Different choices could have been made, tying it to cost of living choices, perhaps, with the grassroots, so to speak, the everyday. Does that resonate with you? You sort of alluded to that the Liberals have been disconnected from what you care about here as a dad, as a Manitoban?
I'm not quite sure how to answer that. The way that I feel is that I think Pierre is somebody who's a little bit more connected with Canadians in the sense of where his upbringing is from, being an adopted child, coming from two school teachers. I think it's a stronger connection to the everyday Canadian versus Justin Trudeau and, in his father's legacy and where he comes from as a family. I think that bit of a disconnect in where you're nurtured and growed as a child and as you grow into an adult, I think that disconnect also affects you as a leader.
So for you, it's not so much about what the Liberals did or didn't do. You're looking straight at leadership and you're saying you connect to Pierre Poilievre, just knowing where he came from, knowing his background, and then you saying Justin Trudeau for you. Did you ever connect to him? Did he lose you along the way, or was he always someone you thought, no?
I think he had a little bit more of that vigor. I think he had that more of that charisma at the beginning back in 2015, and I think that's why he won. He was a young leader, and I had connected more with him when I was younger. Now, being a father myself, I'm kind of disconnecting from his values.
What about the Conservatives in terms of their policy platforms or their ideas? Do you like?
Well, I like Liberals, but they spend too much money. They have good ideas, they have good value, especially childcare. The Pharma Care bill, not really a Pharma Care bill, it's for diabetics and for contraceptives. So not true Pharma Care bill, but I think their ideas are good. Their execution can be poor sometimes. And Conservatives come in there and balance the budget. They don't balance themselves, as Justin Trudeau likes to say. So Conservatives are necessary in order to fix the mistakes that Liberals make along the way.
What are your thoughts on where the Liberal Party goes from here ideologically, Hannah? There was some talk yesterday about moving forward. I think out of the caucus meeting, some of the MPs were reflecting, and somewhere in the analysis there was talk around moving more back toward the center. And I wonder whether or not you think this party has changed.
We have an incredibly diverse and party. We have a wide array of opinions and political leanings. It is really big tent. But I think that's something that remains no matter if it is the Prime Minister leading us or the next hopeful, is that what it is to be a Liberal is to have those good ideas, is to keep pushing Canada forward, to refuse to go back, to refuse to bow down to bullies like Donald Trump. I think no matter what, I just hope if it is a leadership review, if it is whatever, going forward, this country will be in good hands if we have that united front with the Liberal Party, because they have clear eyes on how to stand up for Canadians with things like affordability. Interest rates are going down. We're in a good economic position in terms of the other G7 countries, the cost of groceries. I heard the good news about turkeys this morning, right? Things are tough, but we need that stability. And I truly believe that a progressive government and a forward-looking government is what we need to tackle the challenges of 2025, because they're big.
In terms of the actual letter itself that Freeland wrote, what were your thoughts on how blunt she was, calling some of the fiscal decisions by the PM's office gimmicks? I
mean, Chrystia Freeland is someone I personally look up to just almost more than any other member of this party. She is incredibly strong and capable. I think she is a public servant that we should all model ourselves after. She really is incredible, and I think we're at a disadvantage without her. I think it really, outside of any kind of politicking, theater, anything like that, I think what the letter really said is that Chrystia Freeland was standing up for her convictions and doing what she thinks was best for Canadians, which is something that she always does. And it's something Trudeau does too. It's just they disagreed on what that looks like, and it's unfortunate, but I'm proud of her for standing up for herself and for Canadians.
What do you want to hear from the PM today?
I think I would like to hear some reassurance. I think there's a lot of chaos going on. There's anxiety that comes from not just politicos like myself, but all Canadians watching this. What does this mean, right? What is going on? We need that stability. And I think no matter what, separate from the politics, we need him to reassure us that we will be doing okay. We're going to be okay.
And Michael, what do you need to hear from the Prime Minister today?
That he's resigning. I think with those 24 Liberal MPs that wrote that letter, I think they're going to be a little bit more outspoken today. They're going to be more Liberal MPs coming forward because they need to worry about their constituents and their job. And being attached to Justin himself right now, I think, is a position of weakness. Even with the Deputy Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland, resigning, that shows a huge sign. The news cycle is going to be shifted on this, and they're going into the Christmas break. This is everything that's all going to be focused on this until they come back in January. So what's he going to do? I don't know. I think he's has a few strings to pull left, but I think ultimately he will be resigning.
Well, we'll see. Where it's not even 8:30 yet, so the sun's just coming up in some parts of this country, right? Thank you both for being here. Really appreciate your early analysis. Michael, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hannah, thank you.
It's always a pleasure.
So we will see what the Prime Minister does next. Will he survive another day? Will he survive another 24 days? Well, we might get some advice from our next guest on the podcast, because she survived more than 3 weeks on Survivor. Yes, that show is still on, in case you weren't a fan of the latest season. And if you were, then you know that we had someone to cheer for in Manitoba, because Winnipeg lawyer Genevieve Mushaluk was one of the contestants. She got to spend nearly a month, as we mentioned, roughing it in Fiji, which sounds funny, but when you're on Survivor, you are roughing it. And the world watches on the reality TV show. So she played hard for those 24 days. She beat 13 other contestants, but ultimately she was voted out just before the finale. Here's a conversation we had about it. Hi there.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. So we had all of Winnipeg watching. What was it like for you getting so close to the final?
Oh wow. I could smell the million, I was so close and I thought at least I just want a chance to plead my case, but watching it back, I see why they thought I was a big threat. I never felt like it out there. I was always, insecure about my position, but it was neat. I'm still proud of my placement, even though it's 5th instead of 1st.
What was it like for you going through this? Because, I mean, if you watch back your video going into it, right, I'm wondering how you feel now. Because when you went into this, you were like, well, I'm not a good liar. Maybe I'll make it to day 4. I don't know. I'll keep it to myself that I'm a lawyer. How have you changed?
Well, I still don't think I'm that good of a liar. It takes a toll on you. I mean, you can, of course, any adult, I think, can execute sort of a scene of deception, but it really is one of the things I didn't appreciate as a viewer. It is a long period of time to sustain your lie. And that can be really draining, like mentally, emotionally, as you're living around people. So it's tough to keep your poker face for 24 days like I did, but no regrets. It's such a fun experience.
What was the most challenging thing physically about being on Survivor?
I think the food deprivation, which really isn't a central theme of the show. It just sort of happens in the background. All of that is real. I get asked, did they give you food or their washrooms? No and no. So being so hungry all the time, you feel it in the challenges. You feel it in the heat. You feel it with the mental fog. You feel it with the irritability. At least I do. I get irritable when I'm hungry, right? So that was a persistent challenge.
Some of the things that happen also that, in life would never happen are, the very real deceptions. I mean, you had friends like Sam, and you had this whole fake idol thing scheme that didn't play out well. And then you got, turned on and, you were out. How do you separate that? You almost have to separate what you went through in the game when you come back to your relationships.
You know what? It was super easy for me to compartmentalize the game versus the personal side of it, because I can very clearly understand that there's only $1 million check and everyone wants to bring it home to their family just as much as I do. So even as Sam was explaining to me sort of the day I went home, and apologizing profusely and saying, I had to do this to give myself the best shot in the game. My response was, of course I'm disappointed for myself, but you have to do what you have to do. And there is not a drop of bad blood here. So I think if you're going to sign up to play Survivor, you really have to be able to separate that and not hold it against people, because, what are they supposed to do? Write you the $1 million check and not go home to their family with it, right? I think all is fair in love and war and Survivor.
Obviously, Genevieve, that in the past, other players' lives have changed pretty significantly after being on Survivor, especially considering how far you went. What are you expecting on that front now?
I hope my life doesn't change. I love my regular life. I think I'm one of the few on the cast who still has their social media private. And I just, I do my 9 to 5 thing and then hang out with my parents and my husband and my friends. And I like regular life. I'm not built for anything more than that, I don't think.
What's the most surprising thing? Obviously, you were a fan of the show before you ended up becoming a contestant. So you alluded sort of to the food deprivation, which isn't central to the show, but that was a surprise. What else was surprising, going through the experience of being a contestant?
Oh, good question. There's so much that I felt unprepared for, even as a viewer. I would say the having to reconcile your feelings of vulnerability and loneliness while also not transferring that or wearing down your fellow, castmates or contestants because everyone else is feeling it. So the challenge that you would have seen on the show for me is, do you open up and let these people in, sort of emotionally build bonds, or do you keep it very clearly compartmentalized, like I was explaining, so that it makes it easier to play the game? I think that challenge was something I hadn't cracked the code for before going out there. And I think even on day 24, as I was leaving the game, I still hadn't figured out exactly how to balance that.
Why did you want to be a contestant in the first place?
I watched the show since it started airing, so even as a young woman, and I would watch and think, wow, like these, otherwise ordinary people are out there doing extraordinary things. I mean, it's an experience that money can't buy. Of course, you can go camping, but you're never going to have that type of environment with all of the challenges and the competition aspect to such a heightened degree for $1 million, right? So it was something that always was enticing to me. And then as I grew older, I never lost that feeling of, I think I could do it. And I wanted to try. So I applied for years and years and eventually got on. And yeah, I mean, I couldn't do it in the sense that I didn't win the million, but I could do it in the sense that I survived more than 1 minute out there.
Well, from the heat and the water and the challenge to the back to Winnipeg with our cold temperatures. So none of our climate helped you in this, by the way, obviously. Where are you going to watch the finale? What's your plan to watch the rest?
You know what? I am actually going to LA tomorrow so I can join the rest of my cast and watch the finale episode with them in LA.
Amazing. Enjoy it. Thanks for repping us. Woohoo!
Thank you so much. And thank you for chatting with me and letting me share a bit about my experience.
That's Survivor contestant and Winnipegger Genevieve Mushaluk. She did really well. I could never do that. So we find ourselves at the end now of a bit of a theme podcast. Didn't really mean to theme it today, and I'm sure that the theme of survival is more fun for Genevieve than it is for the Prime Minister, for sure. But that is, this is Manitoba. And if you enjoyed it, don't forget to follow and share.